This is a review that you was not looking for, was it? Yes. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which came out a year ago in the cinemas. Now, for some reason, I've not really got around to actually reviewing this movie for many reasons. One of them being me being too busy, and another just me being so goddamn lazy. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, is the first in the so-called Anthology series of films, which are being made by Lucasfilm since Disney took over the whole Star Wars franchise back in 2012. It follows the release of Episode 7, The Force Awakens, and of course Rogue One is the story about the group of rebels that managed to get their hands on the Death Star plans. So basically that is what all of this is all about, essentially. This is a prequel to A New Hope, and yeah, it basically does what it says on the tin, really. Group of rebels, many of which we have never ever seen before or since. They basically try and get the rebel plans. The guy who was made a fault in the Death Star is the father of our main character, Jyn Erso, played by Felicity Jones. For some people who never knew who she was before she got this starring role in this film, she was probably most famous for playing Stephen Hawking's first wife in The Theory of Everything, which, of course, Eddie Redmayne won the Oscar for Best Actor in that film. So that's Felicity Jones. She's more or less the main character. So like The Force Awakens, we have a main character who is a female, which is quite interesting. Another main character is... it's quite funny, this. I actually can't remember the name of the actor, but his name in this is Cassian Andor, and he's kind of like the Han Solo of this film. He essentially kicks some butt here and there, and he's a pilot of one of the ships that did fly during the film. So yeah, he's kind of like a Han Solo ripoff, but he's an alright character. He's alright. He's alright. So cut him a bit of slack, yeah. One of the most coolest characters though is Jyn Erso. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he's played by Donnie Yen, and he's like a blind guy who's somehow one with the Force. The Force is with him, and he's one with the Force. So yeah, it's kind of like a Force user who's blind, and he just kicks so much ass. He's like one of the best things about this film. He comes alongside this guy as well. I can't remember his name. Yeah, I don't know why. Before this review, I tried to memorize his name, but for the life of me, I just cannot remember the name of the actor, which is kind of crap. Oh yeah, Diego Luna played Cassian Andor, by the way, and Zhang Weng, I believe is his name, who plays this guy here. He doesn't really have much of character development. He essentially is sort of like a side character who comes alongside Donnie Yen's character. Donnie Yen's character is more developed because he's blind. You get to see him do a bit of martial arts and, you know, kicking some stormtrooper ass, which is always a good thing to see because, you know, the stormtroopers are quite pathetic. Who else do we have in this film? K2SO, who is this movie's droid. And he's like one of the best things about this film as well. And we have Forrest Whitaker, and he plays Saw Gerrera. Of course, we can't talk about this film without talking about the baddies. Now, the main baddie of this film is played by Ben Mendelsohn, and he plays director Krennic, so he's essentially like the main villain of this film, and he's sort of in charge of the Death Star plans as well. Another character who is on the bad side, but in actual fact he actually is in the good side, is Jyn Erso's father, who is Galen Erso. And Galen Erso is played by Mads Mikkelsen. Now, of course, Mads Mikkelsen is known to many as Hannibal. He plays Hannibal in this TV series of the same name. And he played a villain in the 2016 Marvel film Doctor Strange. And he played the villain in the 2006 James Bond film Casino Royale. So, having this actor as part of the Star Wars universe is quite frankly satisfying. It's really great that he's part of it. He's a great actor. He's world class. So to have him in this film, and to have him have such a pivotal role in this film, to be the one who put a fault in the Death Star plans, to sort of sabotage the plans of the Empire, you know, it's great. And I think it's great that he played the part. He played the part very well. And one criticism I would have is that he should have been in the movie much more than he was, and there should have been more of a development of his character between him and Jyn, because you get the feeling of the father and daughter relationship, like they really love each other. You get that like right at the very beginning of the film when Jyn's a little girl, and when Galen, his wife, gets killed by the Empire, by the new Death Troopers, who again quite kind of weird. We've never ever seen before, and we've not really seen since. Like, we've never seen it in any of the original trilogy films, which is kind of weird. But I suppose this film, they wanted to create something new just purposely for this film, to give it some more exclusivity, if that's even a word. So yeah, there's that bit. There's good character development, and of course, spoiler alert, his death scene, which comes around the middle part of the film. So yeah, I think that his character is a good character. There are many good characters in this film, but one of the main criticisms that many have said about this is that there's not very much character development for them. And I can kind of see that, you know, you spend the first half of the film getting to know these characters, and by the time the film is over, many of these characters are dead, so yeah, it's kind of odd. But of course, they're the new characters. We do have some returning characters in this film, some just making a blink and you miss it cameo, such as R2-D2 and C-3PO. They are in this film. They had to be in this film, really, because they are in every Star Wars film. So they kept up the tradition of that by having them included in a blink and you miss it cameo, and that is like towards the end of the film. So if you're still awake by that point, then I'm sure some fans of those characters would be overjoyed. We get those two characters from the bar in episode 4. They pop up near the beginning of the film, which is kind of odd. Like, were they on the run? Seeing as they were criminals wanted in 12 systems, I guess so. They had the death sentence, so they might have been fugitives, they might have been on the run, which kind of explains why they would be on another planet, that planet being Jedha. And yeah, of course, I'm leaving all the obvious characters out on purpose, but I'm coming to them in a minute. We have Mon Mothma, who makes a reappearance. Of course, Mon Mothma was a character in Return of the Jedi. She was kind of like in charge of all the rebels. She gave them a briefing in that film. But it's the same actress who plays her in Revenge of the Sith, but she never actually did appear in Revenge of the Sith. She only appeared in what were deleted scenes, what George Lucas decided to scrap. So it's good that they decided to get the same actress back to reprise a role as Mon Mothma, and a slightly younger version of her, albeit. So it's kind of cool that they did that. We have Bail Organa, again, played by Jimmy Smits. Of course, he played Bail in the prequel trilogy, so it's good that they've sort of carried on a continuity from the prequels, because it could have been so easy for them to just not reference the prequels at all, because there's a wide consensus that the prequels are hated. And while I have said a few things in past reviews of mine about the prequels, I will say that they're not terrible films, although Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, I can't stand those films. Now, on to the big ones. The big talking points about this film was, of course, the CGI Tarkin. Now, of course, Peter Cushing, God rest his soul, he died like many, many years ago. So to have him in this film is really weird. But some people have really criticised the CGI on him. Personally, I think the CGI on him looks good. I mean, some part, yeah, you can tell it is CGI, but I think for the most part they did a good job, and I think it's a good sign of what's to come in the future. Just turn the light on because it was kind of getting really dark, and I was starting to not even see myself talking to you on the camera, so apologies about that if you found it too dark just then. So what I was saying was the Grand Moff Tarkin, personally I don't mind it. A lot of people hated it, but I don't mind it. I think it was really cool that they actually did get him back. Of course they needed permission from his family, and obviously they did give that to Disney and Lucasfilm, and they probably would have got a shitload of money for that as well, so at the end of the day they're not really losing out on anything. Yes, finally we're going to talk about the big one, which is the return of Darth Vader. And this is the proper big screen return of Darth Vader. He looks like just how he did in Episode 4, A New Hope. Of course, this is set straight before Episode 4, A New Hope. And he's only in 2 scenes. He only has about 3 minutes, maybe 4 screen time overall in the whole film, which is about 2 hours long. So at first glance you're probably thinking, well, that's not really enough time to have him in the film. But to be honest, sometimes less is more. And his screen presence in both the scenes he was in, wow. The one scene where he's on Mustafar is kind of cool, because again that's a reference to the prequels, and it's kind of interesting how he has his lair there, the very place where he lost all his limbs before he ended up being put in the suit by Palpatine. And yeah, easily the best part of the film. The final act is amazing. It's one of the best final acts of any Star Wars movie ever. Like the space battles, easily some of the best space battles that you'll ever see in any Star Wars film. And like how the rebels actually do get the Death Star plans at the end, it's really good. But of course it comes at a cost. They all die one by one. After the rebellion retrieve the Death Star plans, the Empire go after them, and then we get that awesome final scene. And this is probably, so this may be a huge statement, this may be the best final scene in all of Star Wars, and I mean all of Star Wars. I'm even saying this is probably better than Empire Strike Back as far as I'm concerned in terms of final scenes. All I'm going to say is the corridor scene with Darth Vader versus the rebels. That's all I can say, right? That scene, when I first saw that in the cinema, I shit you not, I had some sort of happiness, but at the same time I was just like, yes, Darth Vader's back, and it is just brilliant. And to top it all off, we had a CGI younger Princess Leia, played by Carrie Fisher. Now, what was really weird about this when it came out was I first saw this last year. It was just over a year ago I first saw this last year, right? And it was days later that we got this sad news of Carrie Fisher having a cardiac arrest on a plane. And then on the 27th of December, unfortunately, Carrie Fisher passed away, and we lost the legend. So seeing that, and seeing it again since, it really gives me goosebumps. Like that whole scene with Vader, he slashes all the rebels down, and then you get the whole escape, and that final shot of Leia turning around, CGI version of Leia, she says hope, and again, good CGI, I thought it was brilliant. It's just really fitting, and yeah, it was such a great way to end the Star Wars film, and it left me hanging. I thought, I want more. I either can't end it here. We could really do with a sequel here, but of course we already do have the sequel, because the final moments of this film are set minutes before the opening of Episode 4, A New Hope. And that is amazing. That is how you do a prequel. Out of any prequel that's ever been done in Star Wars, this is the prequel to watch, right? Now, for newcomers to the franchise, if you're watching this for the first time, you're probably jarred by where this goes in the timeline. So this is how I'll explain it. You have the original, and then a sequel, and then another sequel, and then you have a prequel trilogy, and then a sequel to the originals, and then you have a prequel to the original, which is a sequel to the prequel trilogy. I'm sure you understand that. So yeah, that's where it comes in the timeline. It is amazing. It made up single-handedly for the prequels, but I said the same thing for The Force Awakens. Unpopular opinion here, I think Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, is the better film than The Force Awakens. Now, I love The Force Awakens. I absolutely loved it when it came out, and I love it now on rewatches. I think that it brought the franchise back to its best. It was the best one to come out since the original trilogy. Rogue One, that hit every note for me. I thought we had some great characters, great new characters, some really cool moments in the film. Darth Vader's scenes are just excellent. They're like some of the best that we've ever seen, ever. We've got a good villain. We have got a good score as well, which isn't by John Williams. And the end scene. The end scene was just perfect. It was just perfect. If you've not watched this, then go watch it. Go watch this film. It's just amazing. It's a 10 out of 10 from me. And if you haven't ever seen any of the other Star Wars films, maybe not bother with the prequels, except Revenge of the Sith. I quite like that one. You know, watch all the originals. Watch The Force Awakens. Of course, some of you watching this video are probably waiting for my review of another Star Wars film which just came out recently. A Certain Last Jedi. Well, all I can say about it is keep watching. And until next time, have a good day. Bye for now.